wonderful to have you all here this morning. Welcome to the City of Charles Sturt. We're a really diverse council. We have about 115,000 residents from all parts of the globe, about 110 different language groups living here in the City of Charles Sturt. The council area has just over 11 kilometres of coastline and is bordered by the River Torrens on its southern boundary and the parklands at the city edge. And like other Western councils, it's a strong industrial and manufacturing history with good transport routes to and from the CB, whether by road, train, tram or bike. And we've got an extensive footpath program at the moment that intends to support foot traffic as well around the city as much as possible. And I noticed scooters becoming a big mode of transport for people. Before I go any further, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional land of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with this land. I believe that the City of Charles Sturt is a place of opportunity and is increasingly experiencing urban renewal and the change that it brings, whether it be changes to demographics, housing affordability and housing choice, where these changes bring challenges for those who provide public infrastructure. Recognising and meeting these challenges is what keeps us engaged and excited. Collaboration between tiers of government, where a shared understanding of the issues and solutions usually brings results, and I understand today is part of that process. During 2009 and 2010, the federal government provided funding under the National Water Initiative Cities and Towns and National Urban Water and Desalination Plan programs. More than $110 million, excluding GST, was provided in grants to South Australian councils to fund stormwater harvesting and reuse schemes. The City of Charles Sturt was fortunate to receive $20 million for waterproofing the West projects, including the Cook Reserve and Old Port Road wetlands and associated managed aquifer recharge and stormwater reuse projects. In the past 7 years, there has not been any substantial investment in urban water projects by the federal government. While their grants programs provided a significant and welcome injection of funds to the state, a more reliable means to fund capital works programs to address historical and emerging stormwater management issues will need to be considered. However, in response to this, the 2015 the Senate inquiry into stormwater recommended that all tiers of government investigate new funding models and financial initiatives that will provide for improved stormwater management in an economically efficient way. I'd like to add that in the upcoming elections, the Liberal Party has flagged their intention to run on a platform of rate capping. And given the fact that councils are now seeing more and more the partnership style of funding with state and federal funding, I believe that this matter also needs to be considered in your deliberations today and what the consequences of that might be on the future in terms of our infrastructure needs. The Stormwater Management Authority, or the SMA, has an annual budget of approximately $4 million to invest in stormwater management planning and capital works to address a range of flooding and stormwater quality issues. The SMA commitment to address the legacy issues associated with Brownhill Creek catchment flood risk is expected to account for much of the dedicated annual budget of the SMA over the next 10 years. The Adelaide and Mount Lofty Ranges Natural Resources Management Board has a dedicated annual budget of $800,000 for urban water management projects. This funding has assisted councils in the greater metropolitan Adelaide region to pilot innovation in stormwater harvesting and reuse and water-sensitive urban design. But I question, are these funding sources capable of meeting the challenges of a changing city? So I'd like to ask you to welcome Craig Daniel, our Manager for Urban Projects, who'll come and assist me in answering and addressing that question. Thank you.
Hi everybody. Look, I'm only really up here because when I was preparing the speech for Mayor Evans, she said, "Oh, you're starting to give me some technical stuff, Craig. Would you mind sharing the platform with me?" And therefore here I am. I'm not a stormwater engineer. I'm actually more of a town planner, I suppose. And for those that don't know me, I've been working in local government for about 25 years at Tea Tree Gully, Mount Barker, Unley, and now here at City of Charles Sturt. My role is as Manager Urban Projects, so look after economic development and planning policy, and in particular, I guess I front end some responsibilities and negotiations between major urban renewal projects like Bowden, St Clair, Amy Stadium, Woodville West, and Council's engineering departments when I guess things aren't quite going according to plan. I think while those large projects are flagship projects, they get a lot of marketing and attention, they're also of a sort of scale where actually resolving stormwater is relatively straightforward. In as much as there's a fair amount of public open space, there are some clear standards that are set, and we can negotiate our way through because those developers have a long-term relationship with the City of Charles Sturt. So I don't think the challenge necessarily lies with those more greenfield type of developments. I think they lie in what a lot of the public don't see, which is infill development that's happening at a rapid rate here at the City of Charles Sturt. Melissa, as we would know, the 30-year plan for Greater Adelaide talks about a target of 85% of new dwellings being within township boundaries from 2040. And I think the way in which land economics is going and the market is looking with projects like Bowden that are setting standards and attracting people to rethink where they purchase, from my understanding, urban fringe housing is struggling, while here at City of Charles Sturt we've got a lot going on. I think what that Melissa's mentioned to me, and I think it's an important statistic that really back in the day when the Metropolitan Urban Form was created, with more quarter-acre blocks, we were talking about a stormwater infrastructure system that catered for about 65% area being pervious. There was a 2011 Jensen Planning Design Study with the City of Holfast Bay and Marion Council that found by 2040, I guess aligning to that 30-year target for infill, only 11% of the study area would actually be permeable. And what seems to be happening right at the moment is that we are tracking at around 35% permeable. So if you think about those three figures, we've got a stormwater system that was built for a lot of permeable areas. It's already under pressure and under strain, and we're seeing infill happening within these areas like the City of Charles Sturt at a rapid rate. 80% of our growth comes from infill, not from Bowden, St Clair, West and so on. It comes from 2-for-1s and 3-for-1s, and that's what's really driving the growth of the City of Charles Sturt. It just doesn't get the profile. Obviously the tool that we use, and you guys would use as well, you probably have more experience in some of these negotiations than I, but it's obviously the development plan here. We've got a range of principles of development control, both in terms of flooding and hazard areas, but also in the water sensitive urban design provisions, and they're very important in as much as negotiating both in the larger scale development and also at the small scale. Obviously the small scale response has been a requirement for the owners to detain the peak flows on their property via detention tanks. So that piece of infrastructure rests with the owner of the property long term. If they choose to no longer use it as a detention but rather a retention, and they adjust the valve so they can use it for watering the garden, it's no longer servicing the stormwater arrangements that it's set up to do. Similarly, I guess when that tank wears out and they might want to use it to put a barbecue there or an outdoor kitchen, who's to say they'll reconnect it, and how would we ever know? And I think if 80% of our growth and our growth in impervious areas is coming through infill 2-for-1, and we're relying on private property and small-scale detention tanks across the city, I think we've got some significant issues coming our way if they're not already here. So, I guess I got the gig because I often bang on about this around the office, and I often compare stormwater infrastructure to open space levies, and I think it's interesting that for land division under 20 lots, the developer, the person doing the land division, has to make an open space contribution to DIPTI, a contribution of about $7,000 a lot. There's no required contribution, obviously, for stormwater. There's no provisions in the Act for that to occur. With the changes to the Development Act and the now moving to the PDI Act, we've got some pilot programs for infrastructure at Brompton. There is an opportunity now to really look at are there better ways of perhaps collecting some money, having broad scale schemes within council areas, and seeing how land divisions can generate income for councils to deliver that broad infrastructure stormwater solution. Obviously you need the land, you need the plans. It's not as straightforward as just collecting the money. That'll raise expectations. You need to be able to deliver it, and I realise it's easier said than done. But look, I think when I was asked to chip in and have a conversation with you guys, I was thinking that's probably the issue for me. It's a challenge for the City of Charles Sturt. Murali and I have had these debates over the last 5 years. We've been working together. But I think there's some great people in the room with heaps more experience and an opportunity to share some really interesting models. So I welcome you to the City of Charles Sturt on behalf of the Mayor and the Council, and I hope you have a really fantastic day. So thanks for coming along.